Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Mr. American's Moments in History, U.S. History Edition. We're going to wrap up our discussion on this concept that we've been kind of talking about as far as manifest destiny. In our last video, we talked a little bit about how we went to war with Mexico, we redefined the border between Texas and Mexico, we added some new territory. In particular, today, the focus of one of those territories for us is California. So the image that we're going to start with today is this image of a flyer that's an advertisement for people to make their way to California. We're going to talk a little bit about certainly why people have been making their way to California. And this one in particular is for a clipper ship, which again is being advertised here as a way to go and get to the mining taking place in California. So that's kind of where we're going to kick things off. So far as our gold rush in California goes, we're going to be able to explain how the discovery of gold led to some rapid growth and eventually statehood for California. And so where we're going to begin is with the discovery, of course, of gold. So gold was discovered in California in 1849. It certainly attracted many immigrants and several Americans to the newly acquired territory of California. And you have seen advertisements like this one for steamships and opportunities to go and look for gold. And before you get giggly, or for my students anyway, or before you get on me, the jack, you know what's here, are referring to donkeys. So they were certainly a form of transportation. So people from all over the world are going to travel here. They're searching for riches. I believe if my own family history is correct, one of my ancestors also made his way to California in the 1850s for opportunity in California. So looking at this, we certainly have a group known as 49ers. And these were people who traveled to California during the gold rush in 1849. And so these are people who are looking for an opportunity. It brought a lot of new people to California. So certainly the weather, the agricultural opportunity, but now newfound gold. And so you're going to see a dramatic increase in the population of California, which again begins to explain why California in the United States is certainly is the most populated and populous state in the Union. So far, 49ers built these new communities, again, working together with other miners, and they were known as boom towns. And this is a community that was experiencing sudden growth in business or in population, or in this case, in California, both. The California, the gold rush more than doubled the world's supply of gold. A mass amount of gold was found here. But one of the things that we should note is that while it brought a lot of wealth collectively, it didn't bring a lot of wealth to every individual who went. In fact, I would say very few 49ers achieved any lasting wealth. But maybe perhaps what it did offer is a little bit to get started in a different endeavor and get your feet underneath you, perhaps, in California. And so certainly gold did provide yet another opportunity for people in California. And as more Americans get here, of course, one of the things you're going to see is a push for statehood. But you had other entrepreneurs who made their way out here. And so if you've ever worn Levi jeans, you have the following gentleman to thank, and that would be Mr. Levi Strauss. He created a company that sold sturdy denim trousers, pants, to miners, and he got rich in the process. And this is still a company that's around with us today, and Levi Strauss does quite well. They've certainly been in fashion for a long time. I don't know about you, but I've owned a pair of Levi's before, certainly. Mining towns were also governed traditionally by vigilantes. These are people who took the law into their own hands. And if you are a fan of literature, if you're a fan of movies or TV shows, this might be a term that you're very familiar with. And certainly, if you're a fan of Western movies, This will also be a term that you're familiar with, but it's again people who take the law in their own hands. They're not serving as a part of any law enforcement or any government agency in their actions. California is also going to adopt a constitution and become a state in 1850. In this video, we're not going to get into the Compromise of 1850. We're going to get into that a little bit later in our discussions of U.S. history, and certainly as it pertains, of course, to the issue of slavery. But we have, by 1850, again added another state, and we have added California. Last thing I want to talk about for today in our brief video is a new population of Mormons, or I should say new religious group, and again, that being the Mormons and their travels to Utah along what is sometimes referred to as the Mormon Trail. To give you a little bit of background, the Mormons were founded by a man by the name of Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith believed that he received the last and final version of the text of the Bible. And one of the things, and this is all founded, I should say, in New York, but eventually you're going to see Mormons kind of bounce around the country. Now, Mormons certainly met a lot of religious persecution from other Christians and some from other religions. One thing I will note is that sometimes Mormons did describe themselves as the only true Christians, and other Christians might not be a big fan of that. And so some of it certainly is how they presented themselves, but it's also the fact that they received religious persecution, including in places like Missouri. And so they're going to keep pushing further and further west from New York and Missouri, and they're eventually going to make their way into an area that they're going to call the Deseret. And again, before you get on me that I misspelled desert, that is the term. But again, it's near what is now Salt Lake, or near the Great Salt Lake in the United States, and eventually what has later become called Salt Lake City. And they're again escaping this persecution. They're trying to find an opportunity for religious freedom. And so, what is the name of the current U.S. city where Deseret was? We mentioned this, that's Salt Lake City. In 1848, the United States acquired the Salt Lake area as a part of its settlement from the war with Mexico. And you're going to see a Mormon leader by the name of Brigham Young. BYU fans, you'll know that name very well. And of course, if we have any Mormon viewers, he is going to later become named governor of the Utah Territory, and he is certainly one of those leaders that helped to bring the Mormons into Utah. Eventually is going to become, again, governor, so he plays a really big role in the establishment of Mormons in Utah. So looking at this, Utah is not going to be easily incorporated, which means to include into the United States. Statehood is going to be a little bit more challenging, as again, the Mormons often had conflicts with federal officials. And so incorporation of yet Utah as a new state is going to take a little bit of time. And so eventually it is going to gain its statehood, but one of the things, again, kind of tying into the future where we're heading, is we are going to see states like California, states like Utah, where do they fit into this balancing act that we're trying to achieve between free states and slave states? Are we going to settle on this even? Are we going to see more of a choice of each state choosing whether they're going to be a slave state or a free state, or under that policy of or concept of popular sovereignty? So here's where we're going to end the unit. For my students, of course, make sure you check out the review materials, as of course you'll be having a test coming up. For those of you who are, again, just joining and listening to hopefully learn a little bit more about history, I really appreciate you listening. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the video. For my students, please ask any questions. Hopefully you've been following along with the guided notes to kind of pull out some of these key ideas. And that's going to wrap up another edition of Mr. Merrigan's Moments in History. Thank you, everyone, and